Look, we're really lucky to be able to debut some kind of major new commissions by Anindita and Shivanjani. They're both forces in contemporary art today, and it's a real privilege to bring their work here to Geelong. These exhibitions have been bubbling away probably for the last 2 years, and we've been really lucky to have time to be intentional, to be slow and to be gentle. This has felt really necessary throughout the process, and I feel like there's something really nice that comes through in the works as well. Look, Anindita and Shivanjani's work explores connections between various homelands and Kolkata, India, looking to cities with shared histories of migration, trade and colonisation. And using these parallels, they investigate personal and collective histories of movement and displacement. Their art addresses grief, ancestral loss, and the ongoing impacts of migration. And the dual exhibitions invite audiences to reflect on how geography, history and memory shape their identity, offering thoughtful insights into the interconnectedness of local and global experiences. I'm going to start with Anindita, so I'm going to ask Anindita to come up here and we can ask a few questions about the exhibition that we see in Gallery 1. So if you want to come up here, Anindita. Yes. So this is Story Bridge, and this is a newly commissioned body of work. You self-identify as a twice uprooted Indian, having migrated from India to the US and Australia. Your work is imbued with a sense of cultural otherness, authentic identity and the idea of home or homes. And you consider the complexities of living within contested landscapes, reflecting on how identity is continuously negotiated across geographic and cultural boundaries. This work is a nostalgic response to the duplicate architectural plans of the Story Bridge in Brisbane and the Howrah Bridge in Kolkata, through the lens, as you say, of a migrant on unceded lands. Can you tell us a little bit about this work?
So this work has come from various different thoughts that crosses your mind. A bridge technically is a structure that connects two different sides. So when you get on a bridge, you get on to cross it and to get to the other side. So the thought that I had while making this work was that as a migrant, we get onto this journey really of going from one place to the other, but we never really arrive anywhere because we sort of, we're constantly trying to get there. So going forward, we don't arrive, but going backwards, we also don't get to go back. So that's the sort of sense that I tried to capture in this work.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is like this sense of like a moving between two worlds, and we see, I guess the varying kind of contexts and aesthetics. We see this really kind of, the character of home, and I know you were talking about like the memories that this brings up for you, and then we see this really Australianised aesthetic of the ute going over the bridge in Brisbane. And I guess this work did involve many moving parts and filming in different locations. Do you want to talk a little bit about what went into making the work as well?
Absolutely. I think this is, it's key that we remember what you had just said before, that this exhibition, we've been talking about this exhibition for a while, for about 2 years. What that meant was it gave me the time to actually think deeply about what I wanted to do. I knew right from the beginning that I wanted to create a work about the Howrah Bridge and the Story Bridge, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as to why I wanted to create a work between these two. But the technicalities of actually making this work was massive, because what it meant was I live, work, and play here in Australia, and part of my family lives in India, so my mum and dad, they live in India. So while I was trying to coordinate the shoot, I basically got them as crew, as in, they're going to go and do the, scouting and, trying to find out how and, how we are going to do it over there, who's going to film it, all of those things. So imagine talking to parents who are not contemporary artists and trying to explain, all I want to do is want to have 10 flags tied to the back of a truck. What? Why? And then they just need to go across and come back a million times while we follow with the camera in a taxi behind. Why? So I was trying to do that for a while, trying to explain, because, of course, it's really hard. From here, coordinating something from here to Brisbane somehow is easier because, I can just get onto the Hertz website and book a truck. Or, I can talk to somebody on the phone, but it's just, although, I speak the language, I've been brought up in Kolkata, I've lived there for ages, it's really hard still to actually find a photographer, find the truck, find all of those things. So thankfully my parents did that over there. And then came filming day, where I had, photographers in a camera, sorry, not in a camera, with a camera, in a taxi behind. And then there was this truck. I wish I could show you what the inside of that truck looked like. But anyway, and then we had to tie the flags. Like, it was a massive undertaking, and it all felt like as if I was doing a massive movie of some sort. Like, that was the feeling on the ground over there. Oh, the director is here. So I got called a lot of different names. But anyway, so that was filming over there. And then once that filming was done, I had to replicate that in Brisbane. So here comes all the other technicalities. So over there, it was hard to get things together, but it was quite easy to actually tuck your head out of a taxi and have the camera there. You can't do that in Brisbane. So we had to figure out how to do that in Brisbane. So it was quite a lot of work, but a lot of fun as well. Like, I could almost write one of those, if I was a writer, I could write one of those comedy things around it. But yeah, it was quite an undertaking. But just going back to the act of making, I think the fact that we had that really long, almost gestation period, like, thinking about what I want to do. Because, when you think of, okay, I'm going to make a work connecting these two bridges, sure, how am I going to do that? So that whole thinking time, I think, gave me the chance to come up with what I would come up with.
Yeah. And it's beautiful that there are these like nice threads now then between like your work and Shivanjani's work, and things kind of evolved like in parallel. So yeah, it's really nice seeing the way they sit together as well. Can you just tell us a little bit about the significance of these? I mean, I call them flags for lack of a better kind of term, but can you talk us through those a little bit?
Absolutely. So I'll actually tell you a little bit of a backstory before I start talking about the fabric. So when we decided to come to Australia, this was 12 years back, I think now. More than that, 15 years, my husband is nodding. 15 years, 16 years back. Yeah. So I was having a conversation with my dad on the phone saying that, oh, and we used to live in US at that time. So I was having a conversation with my dad on the phone and I was saying, oh, you know what, we are thinking we might go to Australia for a while. We weren't thinking of moving then, we were thinking of coming here for a few months. So the first thing that my dad said to me at that time was, oh, you're going there, you must go visit the Story Bridge in Brisbane, because I've heard that it looks exactly like the Howrah Bridge. Why the Howrah Bridge is so significant for me is because I used to cross the Howrah Bridge twice a day to go to school and come back growing up in Kolkata. Like for me and my dad, and that conversation, it was quite different because, when you think of Australia as a person who doesn't live in Australia and has only seen it through cricket matches and things like that, you think of the MCG or you think of, you think of the Opera House and those sorts of things. But for my dad to tell me about the Story Bridge, that was quite special. So when I started thinking about these two works, I could close my eyes and I could remember somehow, somewhere, this capsule of memory was there in my brain, and, and that got activated. Things that I experienced crossing the Howrah Bridge when I was in high school or even middle school, my mom's sari and the really decorated trucks coming from the other side, or the different colors, and then, the breeze and things like that. So, and of course, the architecture of the bridge and the triangles in the bridge, like all of those things. That is from where, the colors, the softness of that memory, or, the nostalgia around it, that made me think of maybe there is something else over here. It's, what am I trying to capture? Am I just trying to capture the memory of all of those things? And that's where the fabric bits came in, as if they are those bits of memory, the different colors, and the sparkles are like the glimmers that come back from the experiences of that time, etc. That's where the fabric came from. And then when the idea of actually tying it to the trucks and the trucks crossing the bridge several times, I realized that that softness of the fabric is actually almost witnessing the movement of the air and somehow documenting it. And maybe that is what is documenting what I remember or what I don't remember from that time, or what I'm trying to hold on to from that time. So yeah, that's where the fabric has come from.
Yeah, thank you. It's so beautiful to hear you describe it. So thank you. I just finally, before we move upstairs and look at Shivanjani's work, I've got one more question for you. I mean, this work is sort of a bookend or features in a larger project of yours in the coming kind of year. Can you tell us about the kind of future trajectory of your practice and where this kind of fits in?
Sure. So I've been working on this series of projects called Andor Mohol, and it all started in 2021 when I came up with a photography set of photographs that I took in Ballarat. That's where I live. And that's where the sense of third space, migrants' third space, crept into my practice, really. So I've been consistently making work on this topic. So the first year was Andor Mohol, a photography exhibition as part of the Photo Biennale at the Art Gallery of Ballarat. The second year was an experimental performance that we did together at the Queen Victoria Women's Centre, and it was called Victoria's Secret, BH, instead of V, because that's how Bengalis say Victoria. We say Victoria. And then the third year was, I took it a little bit wider, and it was called Epar Opar, meaning two sides of the river, like two banks of a river. And that's where I curated 8 artists into the exhibition. Each of us Bengali Australians, some from India, some from Bangladesh, and we spoke about, and we thought about whether the India-Bangladesh border exists in the diaspora. And this one is the final narrative of this, where I bring the whole thing back into a personal experience. And my hope is to actually put the 4 or 5 years of work together into a cohesive exhibition in the next year.
Yeah, that's so exciting, and so nice to see how this is part of, like a really ambitious and ongoing body of work of yours, which we have been following over the years. So to be able to hold one of those here is really special. Thank you for your generosity in speaking about your work. It's really appreciated. I think if we give you a big round of applause. Thank you.